Hello, everyone. This is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate, and I have with me Eriona Hysolli, and Eriona is the head of biological science at Colossal Biosciences. And fascinating, as I was reading a little bit about her background and also the world of biosciences and how we're impacting climate change, and to drill down into really what earth science to me is all about, and how we're protecting our planet and the life that's on it and the life that was here before we were, as we're finding out. So Eriona, this is a pleasure, and I can't wait to hear a little bit about you and what brought you to this very interesting sort of STEM-related women network of leaders in this field. So thank you for joining us, and let's hear a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary. The pleasure is all mine. Happy to do a quick intro. I'm Eriona, head of biological sciences at Colossal. Prior to Colossal, I was a postdoctoral fellow in the laboratory of George Church at Harvard Medical School, where I did some work on multiplex genome engineering for the purpose of engineering human cell lines to be virus resistant, but also the Wooly Mammoth de-extinction project.
Okay.
And even prior to that, I was a student at Yale University, where I got my PhD under the mentorship of Dr. In-Hyun Park. And I studied the reprogramming of human somatic cells to human embryonic stem cell-like cells called these iPS cells. And these cells are a bit magical because they can differentiate into any cell type in the body, and therefore they hold incredible potential for modeling disease development and also for cell therapeutics. So that was a little bit of my scientific background. And after I finished my PhD, I was considering postdoctoral options, and I had heard about George Church and the field of conservation and bringing back lost species, in particular the woolly mammoth. And so I was able to reach out to him, and I joined his lab. Obviously, the de-extinction concept is George Church's brainchild, I like to call it. He's been talking about it ever since these ancient genomes started becoming available, sequenced and released. And so it was, he's an incredible figure. He's an incredible scientist, pioneer of synthetic biology. So he was already thinking ahead as to what the next steps would be, what to do with this genetic information from lost species.
Yeah.
And one of them is to potentially how to restore them back to their habitats.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm fascinated with genetics. I will say this, last year, my husband had stem cell transplant for his disease. Oh. And he had 3 of those in the course of about a week period of time. And we ended up having to go to Mexico to do it because I have a client and a Frontrunners member, as a matter of fact, who has a stem cell R&D facility in the United States and has treatment facilities around the world that treat different things. And I thought, how could stem cell, just, you know, a basic stem cell, approach so many different things? Because I'll tell you what happened when he came back. Within 6 to 8 weeks, when we got back and he got his blood work done, he has liver disease, by the way, his score, because they score that out like they do cancer and anything else, his score had dropped 10 points from those. And we were trying to figure out how, you know, I asked my R&D client, I said, how does this all work? Stem cells know where to go. I was like, how do they know where to go? He said, just thinking about a little army that goes in there and they know where the war is, and they just go to town and see it. I want you to know also, he has had glaucoma for as long as I've known him, for over 30 years. Took 10 points off his glaucoma score too. And that same time frame. And I'm like, he's maintained over the course of a year that 10-point drop, I want you to know. So even though there's probably a lot of other factors that contribute to this, that was probably one big one, and I can't ignore it, and neither can he. That helps. So if I can backtrack a little bit to when you were working in that space and you talked about what a miracle or what an interesting, amazing, you know, field that is, can you elaborate just a little bit on that when you were working in it?
Yeah, so probably people are familiar with embryonic stem cells. It's just right after fertilization, the embryo divides. The first early divisions create these embryonic stem cell population that can differentiate into any lineage of the body, any cell type in the body. At least the potential is there. Mm-hmm. And of course, working with embryonic stem cells was somewhat controversial a few years back. But I think what's incredible is, and what got Shinya Yamanaka the Nobel prize in physiology and medicine, is that he was able to induce these cells artificially using just a handful of transcription factors. So you can make these embryonic stem cell-like cells starting from any cell type in the body. Just introduce that core cocktail of transcription factors, and you get embryonic stem cell-like cells. So you don't have to go to an embryo anymore to collect these kind of cells. And of course, people use them to do all kinds of amazing research, including modeling development, as I mentioned, and disease. And if you differentiate them into particular lineage or cell types that can be valuable for curing diseases, potentially Parkinson's disease, blood diseases, and so on, they are incredibly valuable. But a lot of work is still underway. A lot of work has to be done for them to be safely used. Of course, you have to do a lot of background work on being able to differentiate them into your desired cells so that the cells are also functional when they are injected into the body. So a lot more work still to be done, but the potential is immense.
I can see it. I can totally see it. I think this particular R&D facility has several hospitals in India, and they use it for sickle cell. I believe it's sickle cell that they're working on, particularly there, to help eradicate situations that come up with that. So let's move on to what you're doing now. I love the idea that why the woolly mammoth? Let me just say, why particularly that animal and the extinction process, and what the genetics how we're extracting the genetic information and how we're moving forward with that. Tell us how that happens.
Yeah, we get this question quite a bit. Why the woolly mammoth? And it's a great question. And there are multiple reasons why the woolly mammoth is essentially the first species we're going after. One is that woolly mammoth was a keystone species, or the mammoth steppe ecosystem, prior to extinction. And similarly, the elephants are the keystone species, or ecosystems in Africa and India. Really? And they are very, very closely related evolutionarily. And currently, the population of elephants, African elephant and Asian elephant populations under the IUCN are classified as endangered, and the forest elephant is classified as critically endangered. So we're losing elephant populations at an alarming rate. And we believe that we can introduce elephants into a different ecosystem where they are more cold adapted. So if we make them capable of withstanding cold temperatures in the Arctic, whether that be northern Siberia, whether that be northern United States and northern North America, essentially, as well as around all the Arctic Circle, we believe that that actually enables a transfer of a species to a new ecosystem that they can be adapted to, or at least engineered to be adapted to, and away from human-animal conflict. So that is one reason. The other is that we have many specimens trapped in the permafrost. So we have a lot of genetic data from lost woolly mammoths. So we're able not to just determine what the genetic composition of a particular individual is, but also population waste. And so that will help us in the future when there are herds of Arctic elephants to be able to sustain a thriving population without intervention from humans, because you have enough genetic information to create a pretty diverse population. And on top of that, it's also about fighting climate change, right? Okay. Restoring an ecosystem that was very, very biodiverse and very rich will help generate kind of like a sponge to keep the methane that is generated by the organic mass trapped in the permafrost as it's digested and released in the atmosphere with a warming climate. We believe that restoring this incredibly rich ecosystem could help mitigate that.
Okay. What I was going to ask you, and I think you just maybe answered part of that, is you mentioned that there were keystone. Can you explain what you mean by that word so that people can understand fully?
It's an iconic species, a species that actually contributed to very significantly to that particular ecosystem.
Oh, okay. I think if we had to pick a particular animal on the planet that we would look at as far as extinction and whatnot, especially one that's so intelligent, as we all know that species is, that would be really interesting to work on. So the other research, in other words, are you primarily just working on the Mammoth project, or are there other projects in the works right now?
Yeah, our company is essentially, a company on thoughtful disruptive conservation. We believe that at least our early efforts will focus solely on the woolly mammoth, but we do have other plans for the future. But generating that pipeline of de-extinction, actually, we cannot think of a better organism and species than the woolly mammoth.
So, we talked a little bit about that, but let's go further. What's the anticipation that this research, how it will impact once it's completed and once there's a transfer of that technology that you have, that you're working on going forward? What is the idea of that impact? What is the result looking like as we move forward?
Yeah, the potential is great here. So we're talking about optimizing and developing new tools for genome engineering. So being able to actually edit a genome of a species very fast and in a multiplexable way, very efficiently as well, and with minimal off-target effects. So this is an incredible advance. And of course, a lot of the technologies that we're using have also been developed in incredible labs, including George Church's lab. In addition to that, because no one has done much work on the reproductive biology of elephants, it's crucial to understand that for the purpose of our project, but also for the purpose of conservation. And so we're going to be pioneers in understanding more of the elephant genomes and the elephant reproductive biology. In addition, all the technologies that we built as we go from engineering to birthing of the first Arctic elephants, these technologies can actually are applicable to other areas such as human health and disease, because the tools you build for mammalian genomes are similar, regardless of what mammalian genome you're considering. In addition to that, our company is also interested very much in artificial wombs. So obviously, if you want to save a species, you potentially don't want to go to the species that is facing the burden of extinction to be able to generate more. Especially with elephants, they have a very long gestation time, and they're also endangered. So our idea and our goal is to be able to do gestation of the full embryo in an artificial womb rather than in a surrogate as the next steps. So we're working on some incredible technologies that can be world-changing, life-changing, of course, for endangered species.
Amazing.
But with, of course, applicable technologies to generating these applicable technologies even for human health and disease.
Amazing. Very Jurassic Park, I must say, honestly.
We don't believe so. We don't believe so. I think that is something that we want to make clear distinctions with. It's certainly not Jurassic Park.
It just feels that
it's a place to say.
Idea is going to the futuristic mindset, not just for the sake of birthing animals or whatever and creating a whole new planet or whatever, but
we like to call it the Pleistocene Park, the restoring the mammoth steppe ecosystem and rewilding.
Yeah. This is all fascinating. What I'd like to do is see if you could give us an example. Let me just kind of throw this out at you, and you maybe give us an example of how this might impact. We do a lot of work in Africa, and there's just so much need there from a standpoint of climate, and you name it. there's need all over the place there. It's such a big continent. Say you have there's a project in a place like Malawi or Ethiopia, somewhere like that. I do some work with Madagascar because I serve the pleasure of the presiding monarchy there for trade and investment. So I'm all the time kind of looking for opportunities to see how that can grow. And there's a lot of natural elements there that come into play that create all kinds of, well, let's just say causes havoc, as we've learned now with South Africa, who's suffering from all the floods and, all these different things that happen. What could the evolution of something like this do for areas like that who are not really so tech oriented to understand how this might impact them, but may down the road have some kind of impact on areas like that, marginalized communities?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, we have survived as a species, but also with the help of the biodiversity around us. And so as we lose this biodiversity and we think of innovative ways to to fight that, we obviously need the partnerships and the collaboration and the outreach to the communities where the biodiversity loss is being felt more, which is, at least for elephants, in places like India and Africa. And of course, it is to be recognized that this large species may cause some problems for the everyday folk, the people who actually have to make a living in the areas where they share with these large animals. But at the same time, we have to recognize that we could lose them forever. And so partnering with them and at least conveying the information and what we're doing very transparently, and how they could potentially help with even as much as material, or trying to understand how we can get the talent from these countries to actually contribute to our projects. For example, there is almost no accessibility and no major relationship with people in Gabon, where we can actually contribute to understanding the genome of a forest elephant. Right. So we would, at least Colossal is very interested in sequencing all the extant elephant species, so that we understand their genomes better. But we also need to get access to the material so we can actually sequence them. So collaborating with partners, with wildlife conservationists, and trying to convey how important this mission is to preserve biodiversity, but also how the local communities can help in order to achieve this, to empower them to actually help us in this mission, is incredibly helpful.
Well, I can see how the conservationists would be certainly of help in those particular areas like that. It might be that you're looking at just people who are big into agriculture or forestation or something like that, where they're in that sort of environment. So how would the agriculture piece maybe fit in, other than just being partners there? Is there something that they would learn from this? Because we know that they might use some part of animals to be of some use to them as they are, plying their trade.
Yeah, I mean, these relationships, I guess, they have to be fleshed out and understood upon conversations. And so I cannot tell you exactly what those topics would look like, but I would really like to have their input,
Sure.
their worries, their concerns. Of course, there is a lot of valid feedback in that a lot of conservationists are actually potentially not even from those areas. So we'd like to actually reach out to people who are native to the lands where they're losing these species, and understand where they're coming from, understand their feedback, and understanding how they think about bringing back lost species and preserving biodiversity, while still being able to carry on with their everyday life, right? Because obviously some of this affects them quite a bit. So being on that same table, just starting these conversations with them is actually a great start. And we're doing an incredible job trying to do outreach, but there's always room for improvement, and we'd like to do better.
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is, I think when you get down to that nitty gritty, boots on the ground type of person, you get unexpected information.
Exactly.
What you think might be heading in one place, it may totally be different, and why things are happening might be totally unsuspect to you.
Exactly.
So I think that's great for sure. So let's talk about you and what's coming up. What do you foresee in the next 6 months or so? And let's include a little bit of information about your publication that I know that you've got coming out.
Yeah, I mean, we're very, very focused. Of course, I lead the scientific team, and we're very focused on deploying these technologies to actually make all the edits that we want to make to confer the cold adaptation into Asian and African elephant cells. And so we are very much focused into that for now, for the next 6 months. Additionally, we talked about stem cells. No one has been able to derive embryonic stem cell-like cells from elephants. There have been a few efforts on rhino and other species, but not for elephants. I can say that I'm the only one who's derived some sort of embryonic stem cell from elephants, but we're doing better. We're trying to actually make the best iPS cells for elephants that we can get, and we have incredible technologies that we're using out of Harvard as well. And so generating iPS cells for elephants, these stem cells that actually will be able to derive gametes and also derive a a lot of lineages that we can do some functional tests for editing, as well as full-on editing the genome to resemble, or at least to derive an Arctic elephant species. Those are some of the early, more short-term goals, and of course, a little bit more long-term on developing the artificial wombs I talked about. And the publication that's coming out with my colleagues at Harvard is actually on optimizing these multiplex genome engineering tools that are very valuable so that you can make many, many edits in the same cell line at the same time and very efficiently, but without much off-target effects. So making it such that these genome engineering technologies can be deployed very efficiently in order to achieve the end goal is very important. And so we categorize that under the umbrella of the multiplex genome engineering.
Well, you mentioned, I'm going to go back because I wrote it in my notes, Gabon, that you're looking at because you didn't have accessibility there. Are there any other places that you would be looking for potential connections?
Yeah, I think probably Borneo as well, because we would like to sequence this a smaller elephant that's found in the Bornean Islands called the Borneo elephant. It's a subspecies of Asian elephant. So as I mentioned to you, Colossal is very, very much interested. We are at the core a conservation company with a twist, that we are a company, but we would like to actually provide resources for the conservation of elephants. And one major resource is to just even have a reference genome for the elephant species currently extant, currently living. And so we take it for granted for model organisms, including human and mouse and many others where a reference genome is available. So you can easily go and search for any gene you would like, but that's not an available resource for elephants. So being able to provide that to the community, so reference genomes for these species and subspecies of elephants, including Asian elephant, African elephant, forest elephant, and Bornean elephant, would be an incredible resource for conservationists and generally for people who are interested in mammalian lineage, mammalian genomes, and in particular elephant genomes.
Okay. So I think you kind of answered my last question to some degree, but I'll ask it again. Are there any other types of people that you feel like you need, and that be you for the research that you do now and in the future, to create and expand impact on what you're doing? So beyond maybe partners that are in these areas that could help you with material that you might need or access to these animals, is there anything else?
Yeah, even talented individuals who would like to work for Colossal, and that includes genome engineers on sort of like the more molecular level, but on embryology and veterinary doctors and just passionate individuals who would like to advance our cause and be able to provide outreach to other communities about the mission of Colossal.
Fantastic. This is great. This is great. We're going to help you with that outreach.
People who can persevere, they understand it's possible. It's just a matter of time. It's very important to find those people.
Now, this is really interesting. And I've written down a few names that I think might be of some use to you as you're kind of moving forward. And one of those was the Genomics Institute that I mentioned earlier. Could very well be an interesting contact because the person who founded it is a Nobel Prize winner too. So, yeah. So anyway, I want to leave you with this thought. If there's anything else that we can do to help you move that forward, certainly that is in everybody's best interest here on planet Earth. I will say goodbye to everyone else and say this: if you're watching this on YouTube, go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com where you'll get this interview as a video and also as an audio podcast. We'll drop that in and you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts or on our platform.